Okay, welcome everybody to How to Use Podcast Guesting the Right Way to Increase Visibility and Generate Influence. Today we have Susan Bloomstone, who is a BBM mentor, entrepreneur, former PBS documentary producer, professor of practice at Holt International Business School, who teaches communicating with impact and influence. And we'll be hosting this conversation with Anastasia Lipske. I apologize for that. Founder of Access Speakers and a speaker at an podcast booking agency. So we're very pleased to have them both with us today. Our presentation today will be a little bit different than what you're used to. So we're looking forward to having you interact with us as we go through our mock podcast interview process today. But I want to just briefly go over BBM and what we offer, just in case you are not aware. We are a source of small business education, and that comes to you in several different ways. One is through the information on our website, which contains podcasts, blogs, templates you can download, recorded webinars, lots of great information. It also comes to you through our workshops and webinars, our roundtables, strategies, our networking events, lots of fantastic topics that we cover, a wide variety of topics we cover, always free. You'll even find the recordings for our past webinars on our website that you can watch for free. And there is a lovely library of information there. Without a doubt, mentoring is the most important thing we do. And I will post that QR code at the end so that you can get your mentor. Your mentor can play many roles for you. They may be a sounding board. They may be someone who helps you find resources to overcome a challenge. And they're going to be, or they could be someone that's going to help you plan for a goal that you hope to reach someday. So as we bring that down, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Susan.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And being a Boston business mentor is the greatest gift that I can receive because I get to learn from so many incredible entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I am so excited that you're all here today because you may not realize you might not be a celebrity. You might not be an influencer. You might not be a world-renowned author, but you can be a very unique and powerful voice as a podcast guest. And I am thrilled that today we have Anastasia Lipske, who is an expert who has been doing this for years, helping small businesses and entrepreneurs get in front of the right audience, make an impact, and help them to grow and promote their business. So Anastasia, welcome.
Thank you. This is such an honor. And I love learning about what you guys are doing with the Boston Mentors Group, because now I'm thinking of all the people I know, like on LinkedIn. I think I'm going to do a search by Boston and tell everybody you need to be involved with this, because this is really amazing that you offer this resource and for free. I mean, everybody could use support, right? Instead of doing it on our own. So it's a pleasure to be a part of this. And to everyone who is going to watch or listen to this, I appreciate you being here and giving us your time.
Well, you know what? We really need your help today because as small businesses, owners, and entrepreneurs, we want to be on a podcast guest, but who should be on a podcast? Like, what is the criteria? Because sometimes we think, is this for me? How do I do this?
Yeah.
And why?
I think pretty much anyone, it would make sense. If you want visibility, if you want to establish credibility, then getting on a podcast as a guest and using other platforms. So there's also the opportunity to have your own show. So many people want to become a host themselves, and there are pros and cons to both. I do recommend, if anyone that is considering that they always do some guesting first, because that's how you learn what you do and don't like about every hosting experience that you have. Everything from the communication that the host gets you right from the beginning, how to get on the show, what's it like communicating with the host, how do they manage the interview, how do they do the follow-up, all those things you as a potential host down the line can be making note of it. I think of it as market research, like what you do and don't like, oh, this one was bad, this one was good. And then you can become a better host as a result of that. But when it comes to the actual using podcasting in general, it's incredibly powerful There are so many benefits to it. It's not going to be a great fit for everyone. And I would say the main people that it would not be a good fit for are the people that simply are not able to put the time into it. It is not as simple as just showing up and having a conversation. I wish it was. It feels that way, and what we're doing right now, this is like a mock interview, just so everyone understands this is, we're not just doing a presentation here, but rather Susan's the host, I'm the guest. And so it's like being in an infinity mirror. So right now you're kind of seeing the insides of it, but we'll break outside now and again to kind of share more tidbits that you would want to keep in mind, as opposed to me just being part of the interview. So what you don't want to do is show up on the wrong shows that you're not aligned with, or not have the time to properly promote it afterwards, or really engage and develop a relationship with that host. If you don't have the time to do it right, you're just wasting your energy and that of the host, and potentially even the listeners, if you're not going to really be fully vested. So you need to look at this like, does it make sense? Now, some people think, oh, well, I've got a brick and mortar business, so why would I want to be on a podcast? I'm in Boston. I've got, Regina's Pizza, right? Regina's Pizza in Boston. I don't know if they're still around, but I remember them from a long time ago, and they were really good. So let's say they wanted to do a podcast. It's physical. Why would somebody in Philomath, Oregon, where I am right now, want to hear about Regina's Pizza? Because I can't go and get it unless I'm going to go to Boston, right? But the benefit to it is the Google juice. It's the digital footprint that gets left behind every single time. Pizza, Regina, Boston, all thrown into that same arena. It's going to help them come up in higher rankings when someone in the Boston area is looking for pizza. So there's this digital benefit to it, especially now that more and more people are turning to AI. So don't ever think, they're like, oh my gosh, I have a brick and mortar, it doesn't make any sense. There is value to it. And in particular, if you just get to be known, people like to buy from people they know, like, and trust. So if you have a good personality, you are educational, you are inspirational, you're just sharing about the different types of pizzas that are out there, or maybe history of pizza making, anything like that, you'd be amazed at how you can develop a following. And maybe people know someone who lives in Boston and they say, hey, have you been to Regina's Pizza? So this was not meant to be a plug.
Yeah, you're saying something really important now. So I think we really need to stop and focus on.
Yeah.
Because people believe, okay, I have a great product or I have a great service, I'm going to tell all about it.
Right.
I'm going to sell it. And that's where the danger begins, because people
Yes.
do not want to be told what to do. They don't want a sales pitch. So explain more the role of, let's say, we have this pizza place.
Yeah.
And in terms of what developing our messaging and developing our expertise, developing the new ideas that we share, that's what they're after. They do not want to hear, this is the best pizza and we're $2.99 a slice and come and get your pizza.
Right. People want stories. They want the personal connection. So when let's say they were to do guesting, it's so funny. Like, I wasn't planning on talking about Regina's Pizza. I just thought of it. But let's say they want to really start getting their message out there. They could be going on podcasts where it's inspirational stories, transformational stories, entrepreneurial stories, small business stories. People want to hear challenges and successes. Now, they want to know that you got on the other side of it, but they want to know about the time when you didn't have enough money to buy the right ingredient, because the cheese that you're used to using is coming from this one distributor, and all of a sudden it's a little bit more money, but now you are busted, you have no money. How are you going to get that? And then they talk about the journey of what they did, man. They were hustling like a crackhead who needed a fix to find some way to get a little bit of money so they can make sure that they got that brand of that cheese because they knew that their own pizza was going to be affected if they didn't stick with what their customers were used to. People love hearing those stories, and then they're able to share. We negotiated with these people. We talked to them and we got them to make an exception and let us get their cheese until we could turn things around. Whatever it might be, these stories are what people want to hear. They want to know how you did it, where you went, those types of things. And that's going to make the difference. Not selling. They're not talking about, like you said, they're not selling their pizza. They're
I have
real
a live
people.
example for us here. So I know
Perfect.
that
Okay.
one of our Boston Business Mentor clients has a marinara tomato sauce that has protein, which this is the selling point because it has protein in it. And we usually say when we put together our meals with our pasta and we put in our tomato sauce, we're saying, well, where's the protein? I need the chicken. I need the meat. Well, this is solving a problem. So the name of the product is Forte, Forte, which in Italian means strength. So I think brilliant name. Kudos to the co-founder, Adam Rubin. So perhaps you can give Adam some tips on what story can he tell? How would he be a valuable podcast guest? Who should he be approaching? How should he frame his story?
People want to know that so protein's a big thing. I'm really big on that. I've recently discovered I need to get it more throughout the day. Also connected to a Sicilian family here on my farm because that's what my daughter married into, and they have pizzerias. So the sugo is important. Getting the protein in it is a brilliant idea. What people don't want to think could happen with that is that you lose the taste, that you lose the authenticity of whatever Italian, Sicilian, you name it. What's the story behind it? We want to know, like, why? Did you have a protein story? Was there some reason why you wanted to add protein to a marinara? If you did, how did you ensure that you didn't lose taste, that you didn't lose this Italian flavor, if you will? They're going to want to know that. They're going to want to know how you got the funding. Did you bootstrap it? Did you get investors? Was this an idea that you had in the shower when you were singing your opera and all of a sudden it's like, I know I'm going to combine two things, amazing things. And like, that's the kind of stuff that people want to know. In particular, people that are looking for business stories. You could be on business podcasts where you're telling your story about the business itself. You could be on foodie podcasts because those are the people that want to know about the product and the flavor and the story behind it, what your background is. I mean, maybe you're, German, Polish, Irish, like I am. Well, what right do you have to be making a marinara, right? There's got to be some connection so that you're establishing credibility and piquing curiosity. Like, I want to go out and I personally would love to buy some Forte marinara myself and see what it tastes like, because now I'm intrigued. I am absolutely intrigued. So you just get their interest by telling your story, being authentic. You're not selling anything. No one, you're right. No one wants to be sold. But we want to support people that we're interested in and we're curious about. And in particular, if it's an item that we might actually like, then we're willing to give it a try and maybe even gift it to other people too.
And I think you said something very important in terms of what story you're selling about your brand. If you're talking to a business podcast, then they want to understand the business end. If you're talking about the foodie, then you're talking about a different story. So the same brand or the same founder can have several different stories to pitch to podcast depending on it. And I think a mistake many people make is they don't do the research on who they're pitching their story to. Tell me about that biggest mistake ever.
Oh, it is the biggest mistake ever. And so there's the thing going on in the podcasting space. It is pitch fatigue. So now that everybody's jumping on the bandwagon thinking, okay, podcast guesting is the best thing since sliced bread. Okay, I'm just going to get out there. I'm going to get on 100 podcasts in the next 3 months, and it's this mass effort, this quantity versus quality, transactional marketing as opposed to relational marketing. People are rushing. It's like this podcasting rush, like the green rush, the gold rush, you name it. They're rushing, and they're not taking the time to do it right and getting on the right shows. At the end of the day, the one thing that we all need to keep in mind is that podcasting has to be about the listener experience. And people lose sight of that. What value can I bring to the listener? Because if the listeners lose interest, we've just lost the game. Like, nobody's going to be listening. Podcasting is going to just fade. So podcast hosts have so many people, they have more pitches on their desk than they know what to do with. My agency, we don't even use the word pitch. We actually refer to ours as proposals, because it's a relationship that we have with the host where we are trying to only bring them carefully vetted people who they have taken the time to listen to the podcast and look it over to make certain that they feel fully aligned and they can be of value to those listeners. At the end of the day, the listeners are number one. The host is number two, because the host has an obligation to their listeners. They've built up a community of people, fans that are listening to them week after week. They don't want to risk losing those people. So they need to know that anybody that they bring on as a guest to that show is someone that listener is going to listen to the entire episode. They're not going to drop off after 5 or 10 minutes, because if they do, they're going to go look for something else. Maybe they're on their commute and they want to listen to something else because they're not digging this person they're listening to now. So there's a risk involved. You, as a prospective guest, want to make certain that right from the get-go, you are conveying to that host the value that you bring to those listeners. How can you ensure that what you talk about is something that they want to hear? And if you have not taken the time to make certain that that show is a good fit, then you're doing everyone a disservice. And honestly, you're not going to get the pickup you're looking for either, because if those aren't your people, then it's like throwing spaghetti on the wall, right? You're mass pitching yourself right then and there. Better to be on aligned shows and fewer shows and do it right than to go out to many people and it's just out there in the wind and you're not landing because you're not the right fit. So you have to listen. You have to convey to that host that you listened. Be careful that you're not just referencing things that you saw in show notes, because something that's happening in the industry right now is people are using AI to scrub show notes. They're using AI systems. There are booking agencies that are using AI. They will say, I heard this episode. I get pitches from podcast booking agencies who tell me that they heard me on an episode and then they tell me that they want to book me on podcasts. They're lying, because if they had listened to that episode, they would know I was a booking agent. Hello. And I get pitches from people that are telling me how great their client is for my podcast. And they'll reference things, but yet I don't even have a show. So you have to stand out, because these podcast hosts who are getting 100 pitches a week, they can't tell if it's a real one or a fake one that's coming through AI and someone who's not taking the time to vet it. So be thinking about something that you might have a personal connection to when you're listening. So when you're throwing that, you send that proposal out, and then you can kind of say, and I like Star Wars too, because you happened to hear that host mention that they had a Star Wars Pez collection. That is not in the show notes. Okay, that then tells the host, like, oh my gosh, this person actually cared enough to listen. They actually heard me. This is not a fake pitch. It's a real person. These things are gold. But think always, how can I be of value? And if you are doing a speaking presentation, you're trying to get booked as a speaker, same thing. How can you be of value to the audience? Because that speaker chair, that program chair, that event planner, their butt is in the line to make certain that the people that are coming to hear you speak, whether it be virtual or in person, are going to be happy that they gave you that time. So they've got a lot riding on it. And if you can help them see the value in having you as a speaker, you have credibility, and what you're sharing is aligned with what those people are looking for, then it's gold. Otherwise, just don't do it. Save yourself the time and everybody else.
So the small business owner and entrepreneur have a lot of homework to do. They have a
Yes.
lot of homework to do to
Yes.
stand out, to connect with the host,
Yeah.
to show that they're going to offer something that is different than everybody else, what everybody else is saying, because there's so much noise. So before you even want to apply to be on a podcast, you have a lot of work to do on your brand, on your
Yes.
mission statement, on how you're viewed. And then it'll be so much easier then to be able to reach out. But at the same time, each podcast that you reach out to and each host, you really need to research. And as you say, find those little differences that make
Yeah.
them know that it's them that you really like, because they're waiting for the compliment too. They want to
100%.
be liked. They want to
Yes.
be valued. They want to know that you recognize them and think it's like absolutely amazing that you'll be on their show.
Yes.
They
Yes.
need
Yes.
that because they're branding themselves and they want to
Right.
make sure that you're going to share afterwards everything that if you're on their show, that you are going to share it, that you're going to believe in the value of their podcast and you're going to be a marketer for them.
Yeah. A partner. They want partners. You know, they in the industry, it's called host ghosting. People show up, they use their platform. It's like a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. They never hear from them again. The podcast hosts feel used and abused. They put an immense amount of time, money, and energy to create a platform that the rest of us get to use for free. The least we can do is be a partner for them. The other things that you're going to want to do is, because you're going to be listening, then you would want to turn around and actually do a review of their podcast. If you have an iPhone, do an Apple review. Okay. Now, Apple doesn't care about Apple reviews. It has nothing to do with how they rank shows and show shows to people as potential shows, but it matters to people. And it matters to the rankings that podcast hosts are looking for. So if you can do an Apple review, then do. If you can't, then the next best thing is a Spotify. And Spotify, all you can do is like the show, but you can also comment on individual episodes. But what I recommend is that you do a review ahead of time, you screenshot that review, and then you let the host know, by the way, I did this review. If it doesn't show up, so what I do is I copy and I paste it so I have it, and I will email a host and I'll say, I did this. This is what I shared. If for some reason it doesn't show up, because sometimes Apple does lose reviews, just let me know and I'd be happy to redo it. And then I can easily copy and paste it and do it again. Very few people ever do that. You will stand out. It is not that you're doing it like, oh, you pat my back, I'll pat yours, or that it's conditional love, right? It's not really that. You're just showing that you're in this as a partner. You want to support them, you honor them, you respect them. So doing that review ahead of time after you've listened is really helpful. And you can let them know that when you send the proposal, or you can send it ahead of time and then just say, are you open to guest submissions? Because I really do feel that I would be of value to your listeners and I would love to tell you more about me. Like, you can play around with it, test everything to see what works best. But that's going to be gold as well, is getting that review done and letting the host know. Now, if your iTunes password is, or name, your iTunes handle is like, Sunny Bunny 329, they're not going to know that that's you. You might want to change that because it's an opportunity to brand yourself, by the way. Always be looking for opportunities to brand yourself. Have your name out there. But if you can't change it for whatever reason, you can let them know. And by the way, I'm Sunny Bunny 329. Don't even ask, and let them know. All right. Because they won't know that it's you otherwise.
Yeah, and you're really drawing on the point about human skills versus AI. Now, AI is incredible in what it does with information out, information in, speeding up
Yes.
processes. But for true connection and to really be distinct and be creative and have empathy and have, some ethical decision making, we got to
Yes.
rely on us and our strengths. So everybody should not think, well, AI has it all. No, you have to have that human edge now. Your
Yes,
human skills
absolutely.
absolutely stand out. And I wanted to reflect on the fact there's a lot of preparation, as you said, to prepare before. But
Mhm.
you might have all this great content and you look great on a piece of paper. But when you have to do what you and I are doing right now, that looks
Yes.
natural, conversational, we're listening, is hard, hard work. So what do you tell people? Yeah, you sound great on paper, love your story. Now what?
Right, right. Well, you want to make certain that well, first off, be professional. Okay, this is really, really important. And everybody feels differently. Okay, I happen to be a believer of makeup for women. Okay, if a person is adamantly opposed to it, I understand. But you want to make sure that you have good lighting. You want to make sure that you have a proper background and not a green screen. Okay, people, hosts are not liking tech backgrounds, green screens, blurring your background, all that type of stuff. It affects the quality of the video, and video is becoming a much bigger part in the podcasting space than ever before. So you want to make sure that you have a good setup. So in my case, my last office in my apartment was great. I didn't have to use anything. My background was great. My farmhouse that I'm living in now, no, it's not so great. So I've literally got just a backdrop. It's not distracting. It just makes people focus on me. And then there's no tech running in the background, bandwidth problems, anything like that. I use lighting. I block out all my windows. I have a microphone. Now just so you know, I know we're doing like a mock interview, but I'm not in my full podcast setup. So my full podcast setup, I would be using my professional microphone. I would be using a little sound barrier that I put in front of my microphone. I would be using my headset. Okay, now one thing, just a little handy dandy tip here on headset. When you are doing a podcast, audio is everything. Okay, podcasting will always be audio first. You have to have good quality audio. So you want to be using a wired headset, not just speaking into the webcam like I am right now. Don't use Bluetooth, and ideally over the ear, but it doesn't have to be, again, people, maybe they want to look better on video, so they'll use, earbuds that are wired, but make sure it's wired. It makes a difference in the audio on the other end. I don't understand the tech reason, but I know a lot of podcast hosts and editors and people in the business. You want to use wired. Use an external camera. Don't use like a laptop. Okay, so these things, you don't have to spend a lot of money. My equipment is not very expensive at all, but you are your brand. Okay, so you want to sound good, you want to look good. It makes a difference in how people see and hear you. You are representing yourself. So that's going to be an important part. The interview itself, and by the way, control as much as you can with sound. It's hard, maybe if you're somewhere on busy roads, you might have a fire truck that goes by. You have no control over that. I'm trying to block out the 800 laying hens that are 50 yards away from me right now so that you don't hear the chicken clucking. But things could happen. I never know. A chicken could come right underneath my window, and we've got roosters now, so they could be making noise. I Interview Valet, which is an awesome company, another booking agency. They sent me this, just putting something on your door. And I used to put a little sticky on there saying also, do not knock because my dogs will bark. When I'm doing it, like I do everything, I take their collars off, like all this stuff. Control the sound as best you can. But at the end of the day, we just, things happen, and then you just go with the flow, because this is conversation. This is not quite the same thing as a prepared presentation where you feel like you have to be a little bit more on point. But again, it's branding. Your message, have clarity around your message. What are the key things that you want to be able to convey? In this case, because again, we're kind of mock interviewing here, I want to convey that I know what I'm talking about. that I have expertise. I've been doing this. I personally have booked almost 2,000 engagements. Me, myself, not my agency. We've done more. I've got street cred. And that's going to come across because I'm sharing things that perhaps other people hadn't even thought of before, because it doesn't necessarily get shared out there, because as a booking agent, I have a unique angle. I'm in the between. I know what hosts are looking for and I know what guests are looking for. That gives me a unique perspective that doesn't exist out there for a lot of people. So I'm able to establish credibility just by sharing my expertise. Now, there are some people that would talk about, having seeding a conversation. I personally am not huge on that, but I don't have a problem with it as long as someone's not coming off as being too salesy. And for anyone who doesn't understand what seeding means, that's basically throughout the whole time. Like if I was continually talking about my client this and sharing examples and my client that, and in my holding up my podcast guesting checklist and all these things, like I could be doing all of that, which is important, but it has to be a natural flow. If it feels forced, if it feels like you're there just pitching your stuff, people feel slimed, and you don't want that, because again, this is relationship. That's where the magic happens. You're a partner with this host. So how can you also show up in a way that you're blessing that host? If you have the opportunity to reference something that you heard in an episode where you're helping people to understand that you see value, like I talked about the Boston Mentors Group, that was true. Like I really think it's amazing what you are offering, and I shared about that. If you're listening, if you're talking to a host and you can talk about their show, like the episode that you heard, and you reference how you learned something when this so and so was talking on a previous episode, that gives you brownie points with the host, because again, it reminds them that you listened. Their listeners, remember, they're fans, right? So they are all of a sudden like, oh, wow, this guest actually listened to Susie Q, the host that I love so much. I like this person even more, because you know what? No one does that. No one. They don't do that. And you're not doing this to manipulate the experience. I always want to make that really clear, because I don't want to make this sound like these are sales tactics. These are human tactics. How can you connect with that host and those listeners and bless them? It's about blessing them. So when I said listen before you get on that episode, before you even approach that host, you don't have to listen to a 45-minute podcast to know whether you're aligned. Okay? Litmus test, listen, ask yourself the question, would I like to sit in a cafe and have a cup with this person? If the answer is yes, move forward. If the answer is no, shake the dust off your sandals, check out another podcast, and listen to someone else, and approach them instead. You want energetic alignment with that host, but you don't have to listen to a full episode to do that. Then you can approach them. Remember, try to find that personal approach. Then if you get booked, make certain that you do listen to an entire episode within a week of the actual interview, so they are fresh. You're not showing up feeling like it's a blind date, that you don't remember this person, because when you reach a host, they are booking 3 months to 6 months in advance. You need to know that. Really popular shows, it's hard to get on, and they're booking people far in advance, so they might come back. Like this happens to us. Hosts that know us and trust us, they will say, I'd love to have this person. I am booked up until October. Will you come back to me then? So be prepared. You're in it for the long game. This is not a quick thing that you just decide to do it and bam, you're going to be heard out there. And then it may be 3 to 6 months after you do the interview before you're actually heard. So you want the host and their show to be fresh in your mind. So listen within a week of the episode. And if you can make some reference where you're talking about how lucky the listeners are that this host is doing this, Susan, Boston Mentors Group, they are so blessed to have people like you and Teresa that are heading this because of the experience that you have. And I've already seen some of the things that you've done, and I'm so impressed. Like, that is gold. So these are just some, I know I go long, but these are some of the things I'm telling you, people don't think about these things. And these are the differentiating factors in how you can stand out and be remembered, because you want to be different. You don't want to be like everybody else that's out there pitching themselves to be on shows. You're your authentic self. You're selling a sugo that has protein in it, right? And you're telling stories, and you've connected with that host, and that host likes you, and they're
But
more
you know what?
likely to refer
It's
you.
the host, absolutely. But at the same time, the audience has to like you. So when you
100%.
speak,
Yes.
you have to also make sure you're speaking in a tone and in a way. And the only way you can know that is to research who their audience is, what
Yes.
their concerns are, what they want to learn, because there's two relationships going on and they are interconnected. It is that
Yes.
relationship with the host that you're likable and you're connecting and you're showing the respect, but at the same time, understanding that audience. And I think
Yes.
also by listening to the whole podcast, I think you become an expert in your own way. Was I bored there? Or what did they do so great that
Yes.
I'm not doing, because they obviously like this person? The host has chosen them. So learn from it. Every time you listen, you should be
Mhm.
evaluating yourself. Oh, I loved how they had this connection because they did this, this, and that. Break it down. Did they tell a story? Were they funny? Did they give a statistic or a fact you never heard about? And make sure that, yes, it's not the same as preparing a speech. And I think that is actually a whole different mindset, because you
Yeah,
have to,
indeed it is.
have a speech and have a 30 or 40-minute speech with a beginning, middle, and end and keep people's interest. But at
Right.
the same time, the preparation for a podcast is like a mini speech. You should know, what are my little vignettes? What are my best little stories I can share? What is a fact I can give people? Can I be funny in some way? What am I
Yes.
going to say about the host? What can I say that I learned about audiences? So you're not just saying, oh, I can be natural. I really know this subject because it's my brand. I'm good to go. You are
Right.
not good to go. There is so much
Yes, I love that.
preparation.
Yes.
There
Yes,
is
yes,
so
yes.
much preparation that you should not be frightened. A lot of people say to me, well, I'm frightened when they're being interviewed for the media. I'm scared what they're going to ask me. I said, you don't have to be scared, because no matter what they ask you, you have your little vignettes and you're going to be smart enough to listen and you're going to weave in what you want to say. You should be controlling the interview. If you are well prepared, you will not be scared, because you know exactly what you want to say,
Yep.
and you know that no matter what they ask you, you will be able to twist and turn it to be able to say what you want to say. And that's
Brilliant.
where the work goes in. And I want to
Yep.
tell you, as a former PBS documentary producer and reporter, so many times I'd hear from, experts that I had to get onto the documentary. And with both of them being experts and both of being really knowledgeable, I would end up choosing the one that was more articulate, that was more
Hmm.
engaging, that was more able to express himself in a way that an audience would understand. So again, here I'm saying that you might have the best content and it could be very exciting to read, but it's all in your delivery. It's all in
Yes.
the way that you
Yeah.
present, that it's going to make you engaging, because at the end of the day, podcast is entertainment.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Entertainment with education, depending upon the type of show. If
Yeah.
it's a business show, you want education. If
But
it's a
with
foodie show,
entertainment, but you're
you
still
know,
entertaining them for an
yeah,
hour. Of course, you
ex-
have to make the education come out in an entertaining way. That is the
right.
production. That is your goal, is to keep people listening for an hour. You know how hard that is now? We
Oh,
speak to everyone
oh
there.
my
If
gosh,
you get
yes.
them for 2 minutes, you are lucky.
I know. Attention span of a gnat. That's what
And
most
I
people
think
have these
they've
days.
changed. A lot of podcasts that used to be much longer are now doing shorter versions, because
Yeah.
this is what the audience is asking for. And again, we are not the star of the show. The
Nope.
audience is. They are the star.
100%.
And
Yep.
we need to do what makes them happy, which makes them connect, which makes them stay on, which makes them want to learn more and discover more. So our role is really starts off with the listening before
Yep.
we open our mouth.
Absolutely. And one thing to keep in mind also, another reason why you want to do it all the way until the end, there are some hosts that have a specific question that they ask at the end of every podcast. And you want to be prepared for that if you can. And that also that you listened to the end speaks volumes, because some people will listen only for a little bit, but not get all the way through. So the host would know if you've been listening to the end.
Right. There was a professor, I remember this story, that had this whole assignment, and the last line was, if you've read this whole thing, you don't have to submit your paper. And that's how he knew who did it or not, and if they read the
Right.
whole thing.
Yep,
I
yep,
was
yep.
A student shared that with me. So there is value in listening to beginning and end. And also you're learning through that. Like, am I getting bored along the way? What can I do differently? How did they keep me interested? Because if the podcast is for an hour, then it is the responsibility of the host and the guest to make it worth that
Yes.
hour. So listen to it. But listen, I know there's a lot of work to do because you want to listen to many of them. So maybe start off, as you say, do that 15 minutes, just say, is this the right for me? But definitely
Yes.
before you write out your proposal to them, make sure you've listened to the whole deal, for sure.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people say, well, how much are they going to pay me for this? Now let's talk about the value of doing something for free. And then we're going to start to add some questions and go back to our listeners,
Yes.
right? Because we want to listen to what they're asking. So why don't you answer this question? Then we're going to go to the chat and listen to some questions.
So most people who ask that question is because they're coming from the speaking space. Getting paid to be on a podcast does not exist unless you are really famous. In fact, there are going to be times where you will pay if you want to be on the podcast. I caution people on that. There are some times where it may be worth it. So you need to do your due diligence and determine that. Podcast hosts, just to, so I can educate people about podcast hosts and what they're going through. It is a lot of money, a lot of time. Monetizing a podcast is one of the biggest challenges in the space, and very few people can be successful at monetizing, and they try all kinds of different things. They'll do sponsorship, they'll do ads, they'll have Patreon communities. There's like all these different things that people can do, and they can charge. They can actually charge, and some of them do. Maybe it's $25, maybe it's $300, maybe it's more, $5,000 if you're someone big like John Lee Dumas, right? So it really depends on that show. What you need to know is how targeted is that audience? Like, if that really is your audience, and that host can ensure you that they do a lot of marketing to those people and all that kind of stuff, then it might be worth it. Okay, but otherwise, I just caution you against that. Be very, very careful. Also, while I'm warning people, there is something called a Trojan podcast. If you get invited to be on a show and this person came out of nowhere, okay, you don't know them, you don't have connections, and they sound like their show is all that, that's a red flag right off the bat. Because remember, podcast hosts have more pitches on their desk than they know what to do with. So why would some rando podcast all of a sudden reach out to you and invite you to their show? Now, maybe it's legit because they heard you, because you were sharing it, and the hosts from the episodes you were on before were sharing it. So maybe they actually saw you on a show and they are keenly interested in you and your topic. That could absolutely happen. But do your due diligence, because there are these people, they have shows, and their show is basically a scouting show. So they have people, they'll promise them the world, they'll do these quick interviews, and that interview they're asking all kinds of questions about their business, and what they're doing is they're basically just checking you out to see if you are a potential client for them. And if you are, then they're going to give you a heavy sales pitch to try to sell their product to you at the end of the interview. Or they're going to tell you, we are only going to promote this if you pay us. There's all these tactics that they use. So it's a Trojan horse because it's misleading. They get you in, and then all of a sudden they open up the belly of that horse, and it's like, bam, there's a war out there. So just be careful. Do your due diligence. Oh, I just lost your audio.
Thank you for that very wise advice, especially in the AI era when you're always questioning what is real, what is not
Yes.
real.
Yeah.
And that's the time that we need to be most real and do our due diligence with anything in any of our business transactions. So we have a question from Adam in our chat that I would like to read out. He wants to know, this is Adam from the Forte Protein Marinara Sauce. Who do you suggest I reach out to find the right podcast? Is it an AI search? Now we're talking about AI. Maybe there are good AI searches. How do I find the specific podcast that I would want to be on? And I think to follow that up with, I mean, a lot of these very well-known entrepreneurial podcasts might have criteria, but there are smaller ones. So how do you find those ones that are eagerly looking for somebody like Adam, just graduated from college, 2 college students, created
Mhm.
Forte marinara
Yeah,
sauce and are on the road
sure.
and sharing their journey? To me, that's a great story. So how does he begin the
Absolutely.
process to who to connect with?
So there's a few things that could be done. You could hire an agency, such as ours or other agencies that I know. I'm always happy to refer people because I'm not the right fit for everyone. That's for the people who they know that it's just not the highest and best use of their time. Outsource it to someone who's an expert at that. The other option is you do it yourself. If you're going to do it yourself, I would strongly suggest that you use a service, a matchmaking service such as Podmatch. Now, there are a few out there. Podmatch is my favorite. Um, Podmatch is it's basically using AI where a podcast host will set up a profile and about their show and what they're looking for. A potential guest sets up a profile. Their system is going to match potentials, and then you, as the guest member, you can scroll through those and you can accept, you can pass, you can hold it off for later. You could also search within Podmatch for types of shows that you're looking for using keyword searches, etc. I love Podmatch enough that I actually pay to be a member. It's only $32 a month. I pay to be a member and I am a podcast booking agent. I do not need help getting booked on podcasts, but I did it in the very beginning, like 3 years ago, because I wanted to check them out. I'm careful about who I refer people to. So I checked them out. I love them so much. I just stay with them because I believe in their platform and the way that their customer service is bar none. So that's one option, is using a service like Podmatch. The other option is you doing the research yourself. There's a lot of different ways to do research. You can use AI. You could use, say, a chat GPT and you plug in what you're looking for. Another great resource is Listen Notes. If you go to listennotes.com, they do have a free plan. You can go in there for free and you can do a little bit of researching before they'll cut you off for like 24 to 48 hours. But you can go in there and you can search for keywords, things that you're looking for. One thing that I'm going to say when you're looking for shows, the very first thing you need to do is make certain that it's active. Don't get caught up looking into this show and then all of a sudden you realize that the last episode they did was April of 2025. Pod fade is a real thing. Podcasts are showing up every day and they are closing every day. So don't waste your time. The second thing, you want to make sure that they have guests. You just like that. It seems a no-brainer, but believe me, I've gone down the rabbit hole checking out a show, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, they don't even have guests. Or maybe they only have one guest a month. That means they only have 12 opportunities in an entire year. Think about that. If they've got a desk that's filled with pitches, is that going to be the highest, best use of your time? You might be better off looking for a show that you have a higher probability because they simply have more opportunities. So these things you want to like just scroll right from the get-go. Then you can go deeper and looking in them. One thing that you're going to want to look at very carefully when you are vetting a show is who the last guests have been. So I recommend using Apple. So even if you don't have iOS, a mobile device, go to Apple. You can go on a desktop and you can look at the podcast on Apple and it will show you the last 10 episodes. It'll have a line that is the topic description of the line of the episode, and 3 lines of text that gives you a general idea of what that conversation was about. Make sure when you look at the last 10 guests that you belong there. If these are people that are talking about something and you don't see yourself talking to the same people, dismiss it. That is not a good show for you. You want to make sure that you're a good fit. The one exception to that is if the show does seasons. So like there's a host that we book people with all the time, and she'll break out seasons. And so she might have 10 guests and they're talking about one topic. And then the next time 10 guests, they're talking about a completely different topic. So that's the one time that there's an exception where that might not be applicable, but most of the time you want to make sure that you're aligned there. You could hire an assistant or a VA to do the podcast outreach for you. I would recommend that you make certain that they know what they're doing, because I have experienced a lot of VAs and assistants who are pitching their person. I get the pitches because remember, I get pitches to the show that I don't have. And then I literally will find that person that they're pitching because they just ruined their brand. It makes them look so bad. You got to be careful about who, if you're going to have anybody doing it for you, be careful. If it's your team member, be careful in how they are proposing you. If they are proposing you to someone who doesn't even have guests, or you are such a bad fit, you just let that person ruin your brand, because that host sees you and they're like, what a loser. They just pitched me, and I'm never going to buy that pasta sauce because this guy doesn't even know that I have a show on mental health. Like, hello, that makes no sense. So be very careful. In my consulting, I go much, much deeper, and I could go on forever about tips and tricks on how to find the right shows and how to vet them. But that hopefully is enough, Adam. Like, if not, let me know. But that's enough, hopefully, to get you started and give you a sense of what's available out there.
What great advice. I took down every word you said because it is so
good.
valuable, so valuable. So now let's assume you've got it on the right show. We have a question from Casey. Any tips on practicing to be a guest?
Oh, yes. Well, do stuff like this. Practice with your mentor, your Boston mentor. I'm certain that they would be happy to do that with you, so that you in essence are having them ask some questions. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is you want to create a list of at least 5 to 10, 15 if you really have a lot to talk about, but generally 10 is the sweet spot. Suggested conversation starters. They are sample questions. One nice thing about that is that when you share that with a host, that gives them a sense of what you most like to talk about. Now, some hosts might actually use those questions in the interview. So if you're going to be practicing with somebody, then you can ask them to ask you those questions, and then you answer those questions in response. But also give them the freedom to throw some random questions out there so that you're not expected in them, because the vast majority of the hosts are not going to actually ask you those questions. A really good host is going to take some time to vet you as well. And they're going to be thinking about their listeners, because again, it's about the listeners. So they're going to be thinking, what would my listener want to know about this person? Also, a host always likes to be different. So they don't want to ask the same questions that someone else might be asking. They want to make sure that what they're coming up with is a little bit fresher, so they have a unique conversation with you. So be prepared for things that are going to be asked of you that have nothing to do with that, but also know how to respond to the questions that you have on that list. But have that list. Always share that with the host ahead of time, not in the actual email that you send. Okay, you want your proposal email to be very brief and link to things for the host that wants to go deeper. So where we do this is in our proposal, we'll share a link to the profile of our client. We'll start out sharing why we feel our client is a good fit and what our client said to us Our clients are required to listen, and our client has to tell us what they liked about that episode and what they feel they can talk about that would be of value to those listeners. So we'll take that paragraph and we will start with that, because again, we want that host to know right out of the gate the value that this person brings. So if you're proposing yourself, you want to do that. So you want to make sure that that's clear to them right from the get-go, but then you can go further by linking and saying, and here are some suggested conversation starters. We'll also link to the profile of our client, which has all their in essence like a media kit, but it's online. You want to make sure that you provide that. So start with those questions, be really thinking about what they can be that can give you that opportunity, and then just practice. But get out there and do it. Like, don't. My business mentor, Katarina Randall, she always says, stop thinking about getting ready to get going. Just do it. You're going to have experience. You're going to choke, and that's okay. That's okay. You're never going to get good at it until you actually have boots on the ground conversations. But the beauty of it is your brilliance comes out in conversations. And something we didn't talk much about is repurposing content. So when you have a podcast interview, repurposing that content that you can use to create a blog out of it, to create your own posts, to create video shorts or audio shorts. There's all kinds of things that you can do with that, because someone's going to ask you a question that no one's ever asked you before. Or maybe you just answer it in a different way and you're like, oh my gosh, that was so good. And guess what? It just got captured. It was recorded. So do something with that. So
You're
there you
so
go.
right. And, that's why you don't have to worry and say, oh, they don't have such a large audience of listeners. If it's the
No.
right listeners, it's the right niche, you can reach them. Plus, you then have the ability to post and share, and it just builds up on your credibility that you've been on a podcast,
Yep.
that you're an expert, and it will lead to the next one. And I have to say, the biggest value here today is really knowing somebody like you, Anastasia, because you're the real deal in the light of all the
Thank
AI
you.
era. You
Thank
are very
you.
authentic, and what you do so well is you discover what's authentic in every entrepreneur and small business owner, and that's why you're so effective in landing over 1,800 podcasts for them, because
Yep.
you're not just random. It's just not going through a system. You understand their value, you understand relationships, and we feel so honored here at Boston Business Mentors that you joined us and that you were able to share this wisdom with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for your kindness, and thank you for all the valuable information, and thank you everyone who joined. So my final word to all of you is go do it.
Yes, yes, just do it. Use your voice. If you've got a powerful message to share and you're not sharing it, then you are doing the world a disservice.
Right.
And
Thank
I
you.
can't wait to try some Forte protein marinara. I'm getting hungry.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to quickly show up our thank you slide. As I promised at the very beginning, there's the QR code to request a mentor should you wish to do that now. We thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you, Anastasia and Susan, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye.